Welcome back to the Night Shift. Your safe space for talking about UFOs, UAPs, NHI, disclosure, ESP, psionics, giant eggs, egg-shaped craft, and everything else that your friends, family, and coworkers are so sick and tired of hearing you go on and on about. It's Friday. It's January 31st. Thank you all for being here. It's so great to be back with you. It's going to be a great show tonight. We have a lot to talk about. Xander is back with us. He is strep free. He's on antibiotics. He's back in the game. How are you? How are you doing, Xander?
I'm good. The good thing about being stuck in bed for the last 2 weeks is I'm pretty up to date on absolutely everything. I'm pretty much the guru at the moment when it comes to like UAP, UFO news. So I'm a treasure trove of information right now.
That's great because we got a lot to cover. What kind of stuff do you want to get into today?
So I don't think that, as the title of the video suggests, the drones require attention, more attention.
Yeah,
they obviously disappeared from the news cycle, and I it's an old story after a week. It is. If nothing changes, what are they going to report on? They're going to report on the same thing. It's not good for ratings. But there's been some developments over the last week that absolutely need to be talked about.
That's a fact for sure. I think I don't think it disappeared so much from the news, but I think the Jake Barber thing eclipsed everything. I think people with the Skywatcher announcement and everything else that just happened, it kind of all happened in one big go. And it swallowed the whole UFO news cycle. And it is interesting that it's back in the news. That I thought the drone thing at some point would just kind of go away. It would just like sort of fade away. But it's not. It's still happening.
If the drones aren't going anywhere, the story's got to stick around at the end of the day. There's people that think it's going to get worse as well, which we'll get into tonight. Well, not worse. Let's say more obvious. Is that the right description?
I think so. I think we're going to get some insight from Patrick when he joins us. Not Patrick from Vetted, but Patrick Berlinquette, one of our friends of the show and one of our all-time favorite guests, who's awesome. He's going to be joining us in the second hour, or at the top of the second hour. He is the creator, if you're not familiar with his work, in addition to being a very talented musician and many other things. He's the creator of the UAP tracking website, aboveus.io. And if you want to check it out, aboveus.io is the URL. You can go there. We'll be looking at it a little bit later on this afternoon. It's a sort of a passive UAP tracking map, and it's very cool. I'll let Patrick explain. He does a better job than I do, but in broad strokes, when people think they've seen something unusual in the sky and they run a Google search, this map passively sort of captures all of those searches and then through a very clever use of keywords is able to sort of map them. And I figure out where the hotspots are, where people are reporting seeing or at least curious about something they've seen in the sky in an area. And you can see like almost like a heat map of where things are popping off. It's really interesting. So Patrick will be here to explain some things to us. He's noticed some interesting patterns with the drone sightings and the way that the internet traffic is being kind of handled and some of the keywords. So I think he's going to speak to us a little bit about that. But very interesting observations on his part. And just a quick, on a totally unrelated sidebar, I just found this out the other day, and I thought this would be interesting for everybody. Do you know that there are like 1, 2, 3, there's like 5 alien holidays, like official holidays? February 11th, I just found this out, is Extraterrestrial Culture Day. This is a real day. It's a real holiday. Listen to this. I'm just going to read this. Every year on the second Tuesday of February, who knew, a unique celebration takes place that encourages the humans of planet Earth to look beyond this specific world and consider the possibilities of life that might be far beyond. This celebration is known as Extraterrestrial Culture Day. It's a day dedicated to recognizing the existence of extraterrestrial cultures and the relationship that humans actually have with the cosmos. It's a day to ponder the mysteries of the universe and to appreciate the vastness of the world beyond and the place that humans have within it. So February 11th, mark your calendars, everybody. I'll keep you posted on the other holidays as they come around, but this one's right around the corner. So get your Extraterrestrial Culture Day costumes ready, whatever that's going to be. It's great to be with you guys. It's great to have everyone here. It's great that Xander's back. The whole gang's here. I hope Brett is okay. We haven't seen Brett in a while. We're just Brett, if you're out there, drop in and say hi. Shout out to everybody in our chat. Chris, right now running the mod squad. Ebony McKickass, hello. Paris Diamonds is here. Let's see. Kelly Joe Connolly is here. February 11th is Kelly Joe's birthday. Happy birthday, early birthday, Kelly. CG says in Sweden we have cinnamon roll day. That sounds more delicious. Let's see who else. Haley's here. Perplexed is here. Stephen Daedalus. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. If you guys want to get us off on the right foot, I always wait until like an hour into the show to ask this, but hit that like button now, and maybe we can, I don't know, zap this stream and boost it up a little bit as we go.
I should just mention one change to the Discord that I've made following a comment a couple of weeks ago. Somebody pointed out that they just want more links. We bounce around a lot. We don't come into these live streams with a dedicated, like, we're going to talk about this, then this, then this. It's kind of like a free flow of ideas. As a result, we end up talking about a lot of stuff that we don't necessarily plan to talk about. So if you join our Discord, I'm sure one of the mods will link it now. There's a whole live stream section where you can ask us questions whilst we're streaming. And I can see that right now. And I've also set up a little links channel so that when we're mentioning something, I'll post the link in there and you can just follow along straight away rather than us having to like add it to the video description, which is quite difficult to do when you're live. So that's a little enhancement for the Discord.
And we're going to try to do some more live calls this afternoon at the second hour. And to keep it a little bit more focused, we're going to start with a question. So if you do want to do a live call in later and throw some ideas at us, this is the question for today. How has your perception of UFOs changed over the years? Did you think it was one way 10 years ago and now things have changed and you've seen something that's changed your view on what's going on? How has your position on UFOs evolved? What were you thinking then? What do you think now? What happened in between to change it? And another question, if you want to just throw a second one out there. What is a UFO related mystery that you would like to see solved? What's a question that you're really hot on that you want to see an answer to? Let us know and jot down your answers and we'll do the call-ins in the second half.
I want to know your answer to that question. You've never told me that.
Which one do I want to see solved?
No, the what's changed for you, let's say over the last year? What's the biggest viewpoint that's perhaps changed for you? If you're welcome to apologize for Greer, it's fine.
Well, I still think the jury's out on Stephen Greer, but
yeah, I agree.
I do owe you an apology on that aspect because he kind of came through, but it was sort of like weird. I don't know how else to say it. It was just weird the way
it wasn't as described, was it? If you got served that in a restaurant, you'd have sent it back. You'd have said, you tried, but it's clearly gone in the microwave.
Well, how about you first? How has your perception of UFOs changed over the years?
I would say the biggest one recently is I always used to think it was just very straightforward. There's probably just one race visiting us, probably just the Greys. And, it's probably just a very simple reason for why they're here. Either that they've genetically modified us, they created us, whatever. I never used to think in like that any other races are really that believable. If we're thinking about like mantids and reptilians and things like that, it sounds ridiculous. But honestly, now I'm kind of like, it's actually probably more probable that if one knows about us, then probably more than one species knows about us. So I think it was probably Sheehan that started that that change of mindset, because he's just straight up very adamant that there's like at least 8 or 5 or 6, 7 species interacting with planet Earth. So that would probably be definitely my biggest change over the last, I think that's happened in the last year or so.
How many?
How many?
Yeah, that's a good one. And Sheehan's a one that I always pay very close attention to, because he's had attorney-client privilege with all of his people. Like, he's represented everybody from a legal standpoint at some point or another, from John Mack to Greer and Elizondo. So he knows a few things. Like, this guy has been involved for a very long time. So that really kind of caught me off guard too when he said that, especially in that Harvard lecture hall where he was doing that presentation. And the comment that he made about the intervention, he said there's going to be, not there might be, not there could be, not it may happen, but there will be some kind of an intervention where these beings show up. And we'll talk about it later, but Chris Bledsoe is saying the same thing. And that's really interesting. I think for my part, in terms of how things have changed for me over the years, 2 things have jumped out at me recently. One is how the emphasis has shifted from they are coming from somewhere far, far, far away to they've always been right here. And this whole idea of like, maybe they're coming from a distant galaxy or a faraway planet or something in a different star system, took a back seat to this other idea that no, they're native to this planet, possibly, maybe in a parallel timeline or some kind of through some weird science fiction explanation, but this is actually where they're from. I'm partial to this idea that they may be whoever they is, or at least one of the thems is a precursor, sort of progenitor civilization that evolved way before we did, and then somehow retreated underground or has maintained a very low profile while our whole civilization has risen. And now this planet's not big enough for the both of us, and we have to figure out how to live together or not. I think that is my current sort of view. And the other thing that I noticed is how wild this space has gotten. Like, it seems like the floodgates are open wide now, and everybody's pouring into it, and everybody has something to say, and everybody has something to add. And the number of theories that are flying around is off the wall. We had we've got a group chat going on with Chris Ramsey and Luigi, and we were talking this morning, and you and Chris were going back and forth about this whole. He was saying like, what about potential energy sources and all of these different ideas, and then even at the end we were talking about this whole thread goes, and then at the end he goes, this just sounds insane, like this sounds so crazy, but I'm here for it. And I feel like that's where I'm at too. It's just getting crazier by the minute, but I can't look away no matter what I do.
I think as well, in terms of the, like, are they extraterrestrial or interdimensional? I think maybe even the word, the definition will need to be addressed at some point, because if we're talking about, we got people from different countries, but we're all humans, for example. Like,
speak for yourself.
And we can travel to the other side of the world in less than a day. And obviously 100 years ago, that was literally like, that's impossible. That was never going to happen. So clearly the Earth has gotten a lot smaller, and now we're quite clearly one gigantic human race that's trying to get along. And I think at some point we're going to have to address the idea that distance might not really matter at all when it comes to the kinds of propulsion we're talking about. When we're talking about bending space-time, is there really, in the same sense, is 1,000 light years away really something to even talk about? Because it's the same as the backyard, really, if you can travel instantly to anywhere else that you might want to go. The idea of extraterrestrial just kind of fades away. And interdimensional, extraterrestrial, they've always been here. All of that starts to coalesce and make sense to me as a sort of, they're not any of the above. They are just, to sound a little bit woo-woo, they're all just the same universal beings that we are. as all of humans are on planet Earth, they're all just the same.
Ooh,
conscious thing.
Did you see that thing on the Bledsoe Said So podcast? The most recent one, it's like 18 minutes long. I just listened to it yesterday. And you probably haven't seen it, but if you have, the hypnotic regression, where they read his transcript of Chris Bledsoe's hypnotic regression session, and he's telling.
Oh, yeah. I've read the transcript. Yeah,
his experience, and and in the middle of it, first of all, the beginning is he's terrified and he's freaking out, and then in the middle, he's like, "Oh, we are all the same. We're all the same. Like they were with me before I was born, and they're still with me. And then like after we die, this is all one big loop, and we're just kind of like." He's like explaining it as he relives it, and it sounds very similar to what you just said. It's interesting. Did you ever read? There's a science fiction series called Hyperion. Did you ever read the Hyperion?
No,
book?
I've heard of it.
Hyperion is a science fiction series that's amazing for many reasons, but one of the key storytelling devices in the series is that their future civilization has essentially what are basically like a Stargate. I mean, think of a big giant Stargate, except the Stargates are on all the time. And every Stargate you can walk into when you walk out the other side, you're on a different world. So they've got hundreds of these all over the place, and their whole civilization spans galaxies. It's just, there is no distance. It's just all one big thing. They've got you could think of like a river that flows through 3 different planets, because it keeps going through 3 different Stargates and it just appears on the other side. And I always thought that was really interesting. And what you just said was kind of compelling, because if distance is not a factor, if energy is not a factor, and from what we can gather, energy for these beings is not a factor at all, and time doesn't seem to be a factor, then maybe that's partly to do with maybe that has something to do with all of the historical sightings going back through time. Maybe for these beings, like they just see time as like a topographical map, and they can just sort of pop in and out wherever they want. But for us, 1,000 years has to pass between seeing them from point A to point B. And I wonder, how would that affect a civilization if you had access to technology like that, where distance wasn't a factor at all and time wasn't really a factor? What would that?
I often wonder if our perception of time, as this is probably getting a bit too philosophical now for this kind of I'll be quick. I often wonder if our perception of time is similar to our perception of light, where we're kind of constricted because it's served us evolutionarily to see time in this linear, the arrow of time. It's similar to our visible spectrum. We only see a small narrow band of visible light because that's all we need to see to survive and thrive. But obviously there's a huge band of light that we can't even perceive without all of this extra technology. And yeah, maybe time works in the same way, where once you've developed the technology, the arrow of time makes no more sense than everything else as a whole.
That is another very compelling idea that I found interesting. It's sort of like, it's another possibility that because we're so limited in the electromagnetic spectrum that we can really see and perceive, we probably are missing like 99% of what's going on. There's probably or more. And it's probably, that's where this interdimensional idea, I think, comes from, is maybe it's not even, maybe it's all one thing. It's all one dimension. We just have no idea. It's
I always forget the name of that scientist that always talks about the taste of chocolate. Yeah, what's his name?
Taste of chocolate.
Yeah. Somebody will know in the chat 100%. He's a mathematician, I think, but he says something very similar, where it's like, it doesn't serve us to see all of reality at all. We've developed these sort of goggles to interact, and we're living in some sort of virtual reality that only serves the evolutionary purpose. And in fact, if we saw much more of reality, that'd just be too much information, and it would take too much energy to process it all, and thus would not be useful for evolution. I'm sure somebody will know what his name is. It's really annoying me that I don't know. I'll find out who it was. But you know who it is because we've talked about him before.
Oh,
Donald Hoffman. There we go.
Hoffman.
Thank you.
He's
NX Inc. D.
Yeah.
He said it right.
Hoffman's great, and Hoffman is so interesting. We're going way off topic, but we'll circle back, guys. I promise we're going to pull out of this dive. Hoffman is interesting because when you watch him speak, he's freaked out by his own research. Like, he doesn't know what to do with it, and he says that he's like, I don't know how to explain this. Like, I don't even know how to wrap my own mind around it. But the fact is, like, the data tells us this is true. So how do you where do you go from there? I don't know, but. Yeah, for anybody who's interested, Hoffman's great.
Drones.
Let's see here. Drones, yeah. Well, love this conversation. Thank you, guys. Oh, well, thanks, Wes Decker. That's awesome. Thanks for the super chat. Xander, bring everybody up to speed on the drone situation. You've been bedridden for a few days. You're caught up. I'm not. What's happening?
I think the biggest part of the story was obviously the Trump administration promised they would look into it. They looked into it, and they came back and basically said the same thing as the Biden administration, where it's effectively nothing. But they added in the fact that they're apparently research drones, which is something the Biden administration didn't mention. So there's a little bit of a clash there in terms of information. They were apparently all FAA authorized, and they're either that or they're enthusiasts/hobbyists. That's obviously angered a lot of people because that answer doesn't really make a lot of sense. We know that drones have been violating airspace. We know that we know there's a lot more to this than meets the eye. So I guess we've got the White House press briefing queued up. We can play that.
Why don't we start with that for people who didn't catch it, and then we can just set the stage. Trump promised that he was going to give us an answer on the drone thing, like within the first day or two of the new administration. Like, that was he just kind of said that. So we were all hoping for something, and then whatever we're about to see is what we got.
I do have news directly from the President of the United States that was just shared with me in the Oval Office from President Trump directly, an update on the New Jersey drones. After research and study, the drones that were flying over New Jersey in large numbers were authorized to be flown by the FAA for research and various other reasons. Many of these drones were also hobbyists, recreational, and private individuals that enjoy flying drones. In time, it got worse due to curiosity. This was not the enemy. A statement from the President of the United States.
Thanks for watching.
Lester Holt.
I do have.
Did anybody push her on that in the briefing?
No. There were no further questions on that.
What's your reaction to that?
It's obviously, I don't think they're lying. I think they know they've been fed some BS, but they can't say they don't know. They have to say something. And then they're going to say something that doesn't make the news. And that's what they did. They said something that literally was the most boring response ever, because the administration needs this to go away now, because they've asked I genuinely believe they've probably asked, and I think they've been fed the same BS that the Biden administration was fed. So where do they go from here? They have to, at some point, an administration has to at some point say, we've just been lied to. Because I don't think the administration has ever admitted something like that. And they really should, because that would highlight that there's quite clearly a disconnect in terms of what the executive branch is allowed to know, or at least should know.
Well, I think that calls to mind the whole heart of this conversation, and the disclosure question in general is like, who knows what? Who has what information, and why, and who is making decisions? It's obviously not the president, clearly, and Congress doesn't have a clue, so it's not them, and it's someone. So there's an unelected group of people somewhere hidden within the military intelligence bureaucracy somewhere. And according to Jake Barber, who I do believe this is accurate, no matter what else comes out, I think private individuals and private organizations and other groups have probably been doing their own stuff as well to try and figure out what's happening. But yeah, it's weird. It's unnerving that the president of the United States cannot get a clear answer from anybody on what exactly it is that's flying over. There was one that flew over. They restricted airspace near one of Trump's residences recently, and I think that was just in the last like 3-4 days. They had to like change some planning around that. My thought on the statement is interesting because they very carefully worded that statement. The drones that people are seeing were approved to be there by the FAA. That tracks with something that I saw. I was talking to my uncle, who's a pilot, an airline pilot. He flies the big jets, and he was showing me this app that he uses. And this was over the holidays, and he showed me the whole eastern seaboard of the United States. And he said, these are called restricted flight areas. And there's like these little red circles. And he's like, every one of these circles is a restricted flight area. So you have to be above a certain altitude, or you're not allowed to do certain things in these areas. And he's like, we've never had this many. And he showed me the whole eastern seaboard of the United States was lit up like a Christmas tree. And he's like, that's unusual. And this guy's been flying for like 40 years. So he's like, seen it all. But he said that was really strange. So they say that the drones are FAA approved to be there. Something Chris Bledsoe said in his interview that he did on the Bledsoe Said So podcast recently, he said that his suspicion is that the drones are up. The drones that are there, that are approved to be there, are there to watch orbs. Or the other craft. They're surveilling the other craft. So it's not a false statement. It's a true statement. There are drones. They are approved to be there. They're there for various research purposes. But what they're leaving out is that there's something else there that's not drones, and they're not talking about that at all, which I think is really interesting. And then we got, well, you showed me this Chris Sharp tweet.
Yes.
Maybe we can talk about that.
Yeah. Let me share that. So Chris Sharp obviously works every so often for the Daily Mail, I think. And the Daily Mail got a... hang on, do I still have the link open? I will in a second. Sorry, I'm still recovering a little bit over here. Here we are. So the Daily Mail got hold of this screenshot. Chris Sharp... here we go. Right. So Chris Sharp says this is the most consequential leak revealing the reality of the situation. Conventional anti-drone measures failed. I trust Chris Sharp on this sort of stuff. He's a great journalist, so it is a little bit trust me, bro, when we're sharing screenshots like this. But
Chris he's really good at he doesn't post stuff
exactly.
unless he's sure.
So this looks like a screenshot from a slide. We've got 3 different agencies up here. We've got NASA. I don't know I saw the other emblem earlier today. It's a Department of Defense emblem of some sort, I'm sure, and I can't remember. I don't know the middle one, but this appears to be a slide where they talk about a couple of countermeasures. So you saw this, Clint. So what do you think of it?
It looks to me like, well, let's see here as we read it out loud for people who aren't looking at the screen. Partnerships through the CUAS working group was key to response efforts. Now, this is a slide, and on the top of the slide, it looks like there's a NASA emblem, a Defense Department emblem, and next to that, I can't tell what the other one is. I'm not sure what that is. So I don't know what this slide is from, but yeah, it says over-reliance on...
Someone's saying CIA.
CIA.
It could be, I don't know.
Lessons learned, over-reliance on RF, radio frequency-based detection equipment, failed. Over-reliance on signal jamming mitigation technology, failed. More training equipment needed for ground intercept teams. Deconfliction and accurate reporting. Binos, binoculars, thermal devices, providing visual observation. So thermal. They're saying more training required for ground intercept teams' thermal devices. That's interesting. Providing visual observation checklists, utilization of commercial civil aviation tracking apps, better form of communication for field personnel needed, interoperability between agencies. That makes sense. Yeah, they've got sheriff's department and like FBI and National Guard, or all these different groups trying to go out and look at these things. They're not talking to each other. Android Team Awareness Kit. Let's see, not initially viewed as crisis response, delay in external resources being deployed, delay in setting up unified command post, more robust notification and reporting system among partner agencies. Yeah, this is interesting. It looks like this is a briefing slide that is saying they haven't gotten a handle on this, and they don't know what they're dealing with, and they're still trying to figure that out. Which tracks? It's kind of what we've been saying.
It doesn't look like the slide that you'd share if all of these drones were just research drones and they're all FAA authorized. And it doesn't make a lot of sense, this slide.
Yeah,
if that's the case.
You wouldn't even have a slide. There'd be no briefing. There's the fact that it exists at all is alarming. But
one interesting thing about this slide, and I'm gonna share I'm assuming a lot of people have already seen the Jesse Michaels interview with Jake Barber. I'm going to share the link to it now so that you can all watch it after the stream, of course. That's just been shared in the Discord. Again, if you join our Discord, we've got a little live links section so you can see all of the stuff as we talk about it. Jake Barber actually talks about the fact that there's so many hands on this stuff and all of these hands don't talk to each other. So what comes across as people stonewalling people is literally people like, we don't know. Like it's he says it's not as organized as everybody thinks it is. It's really is just more of a mishmash of different entities all trying to do the same job. And as a result, they end up conflicting with each other all the time. And that's kind of displayed in this screenshot of the slide where they say more robust notification and reporting systems among partner agencies and installations. That's definitely worth noting.
Yeah, because if you've got 5 or 10 different agencies all responding to the same thing and no one's communicating and no one person is coordinating that response, that's chaos. So I get that, but I thought that's what like NORAD was for. Like, isn't that don't we have military people that's their job is to like keep track of all this stuff? It's a very interesting wrinkle in this whole thing. And I hadn't really thought about the local and state response versus the federal response, but all those things must be happening at the same time. I wonder if it's any different in the UK. It seems like
the UK is just done. We gave up on our military like a decade ago.
Did you guys give up on your military? Oh, you were all right.
We've got heart. We've got lots of heart.
You got a lot of heart.
Yeah.
I think so. Insofar as I can tell, that the drone situation is not resolved at all. It's just it's gotten more confusing, and it seems like if they did have some kind of a standardized system. Oh, thanks, Rach. This journey of discovery with you guys is awesome. If they did have, if this was a common thing and they had seen this before, and I'm assuming that we had for at least 20 or 30 years, we've had some kind of a system in place to track UFOs, UAPs, intercept them or recover them if they go down. Like they know what's in the sky and they can tell. We know from Jake Barber's interview that when Ross Coulthard asked him about the Lockheed firefight story, he kind of said, well, I've heard the same thing, and I think that's true. I think I've heard it from a reputable source. That story was talking about that 2 different groups tracked a UFO or a alien reproduction vehicle, which I guess is what it turned out to be, that crashed, and then 2 different recovery teams went out to get it. So there is a framework, there is some kind of a system in place for them to do this. which begs the question, why is this drone situation, and we're using air quotes on drones because it's obviously not all drones, but this seems to have caught everybody by surprise, particularly our own military and our own government. I think that's really interesting. Chris Bledsoe has, in his interview, I know I keep bringing up Chris because he's been back around lately, and we're actually trying to get Chris on the show. I reached out to him, and we've got a few different lines in the water to try and get Chris. Hopefully we'll be able to get some more information from him. But his sense is that something has changed. There's something else going on, and the orbs are there to monitor that. And then we are sending up drones to monitor the orbs. And then he further confuses things because he says that, in his view, an orb can manifest as a physical craft. And so you can see an orb 1 second, and you can look away and look back, and then you'll see a disc. And it's not a different craft; it's the same thing. So there's so many more questions. Like I feel like we have 1,000 more questions than we did 3 months ago, and they just keep getting weirder.
We could. There was again. I'm going to talk about the Jesse Michaels interview because Jake Barber was involved in the drone activity and has been consulting with the FBI and stuff like that. There's a little segment from the interview that we could go through. I don't think you've seen it, have you?
Yeah.
It's a brilliant interview. I would suggest that everybody watches it. It's 3 hours long. It's another long one, but Jake Barber's quite clearly, he knows what he's on about. So we could go through what his take is on the New Jersey drones.
Let's do it. I got about 18 minutes before
That should
Patrick calls.
Yeah, it's quite a long segment, so we can pause as we go along and discuss, I guess. So let's see what he has to say.
You're touching on the New Jersey thing. We were just out there. We were assigned to support the DOD and the FBI task force that was trying to be stood up out there, serving essentially as a hidden hand like we normally are dispatched, to try and come in and offer something in order to declare this a hazard to public safety, or to find criminal intent or criminal actions so that the FBI could have a basis. So,
Jake, what did you find out?
Well,
Because
that's where I'm going. I'm happy to tell you.
The entire world is extremely confused. It feels like the highest levels of government are confused as to what is going on.
Okay. Our first day there, we got there. We were primarily focused to the activity in and around, or above and around, I should say, Picatinny Arsenal, which is a government weapons installation, weapons focused, let's say, or weapons centric installation. First night there on the ground, we get our OPs set up and we're watching the skies. We're organization I work for now, one of the founding members of, it's called Skywatcher, and we specialize in aerial intelligence. This is completely autonomous and an independent venture. It's full of guys like me that have worked in an official capacity for the government. We've brought our tools and talent and experience and are investing them into this private company, and then trying to help the government where we can, and also provide a window for the public into this subject and these technologies. So that being said, we show up in New Jersey, first night, on location. Within 30 minutes, over Picatinny Arsenal, whop, 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 whop. All these orange orbs come into existence right over Picatinny Arsenal. Trying to do timestamps on how long they were there was difficult because it appeared about 45 minutes at a time, which is consistent with some traditional large battery-powered drones. But what we can't tell is if that was the same drone or it was disappearing and reappearing. And that was the sensational language that was used more often. What it could mean is that they were turning their lights off and on, and that's why they were disappearing and reappearing. But
were they only at night?
Only at night for us. It was between like 1700 and midnight. So from 5 o'clock until about midnight is when we monitored or captured most of the activity. And so, the problem with that whole thing out there is most of the data being collected and the reports were coming in were from unqualified observers on the ground using visual spectrum. So what I mean by that is humans looking up with their eyes and going, bro, what's that? It's also a very busy airspace around there. So there's airplanes, there's helicopters. I mean, if you really wanted to red team that situation, what I would have done is I would have put a bunch of glow sticks and helium balloons and tied.
Just quickly, he talks about red team there. Red team is the term that he uses throughout this interview as basically if you're on the red team, you're sort of employed to try and mess up the blue team. The blue team being the US Army or whatever, and the red team is there to just basically test the weaknesses. So the red team is there basically to deceive and to try and muddy the waters and make things difficult. That's what he means by red team. But to point out, this was filmed way before the Trump administration released their findings on the drones. And he's talking about orbs. He's talking about them, their lights turning off and stuff. None of that jives with the idea that these are FAA authorized research drones.
Yeah, that's an interesting data point, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's see what he says next. He was saying glow
Them
sticks.
together,
Yeah.
and then send them up in the air and watch people just lose their shit because you wouldn't have been able to discern. And then you shoot them with,
What he says is completely logical and easy and cheap. And we haven't seen this. Like, it's just worth pointing out. Like,
I want to. Well, I
BB
would
guns
point this out real quick because there's historical precedents for all kinds of weird stuff that's been done in conflict. In World War II, the Japanese sent over bubonic plague in ceramic pots. They had fleas that were infected with bubonic plague. They put them in clay pots and attached them to balloons and flew them over to the United States mainland, where they landed. And the idea was that they would break, or they would land and then the fleas would jump out and they would start an outbreak of plague across the United States that would make it difficult for us to respond. Stuff like that has happened many times before, and there's all kinds of weird stuff that could be going on now. I mean, this is back in World War II. You can imagine what they could be doing now. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that it could be something really weird that's done, I don't know, by an enemy state. But let's go on. Let's see what he says.
the point he's making is that these deception techniques are cheap and easy. So the fact that he's perplexed by this is telling anyway.
Until they pop and disappear. Like, there's so much room for fuckery in that situation that it's hard to cut through the noise. What we were observing, because we are qualified observers, was not fuckery. There's something very concerning over Picatinny Arsenal. So the first thing we looked at was, okay, these are probably large, like, drones that we know the classes of. They're available out there in military inventory and in some civilian inventory, that was turning off its lights en route and then on RTB, and which is illegal. So there's our case for breaking laws right there. If this was in FAA controlled airspace, when a drone leaves the ground, first of all, UAS, an unmanned aerial system, has to have all the FAA approved lighting systems that any other aircraft does, and it has to have them on when it leaves the ground. It's also limited. You have to be a licensed operator, and you're not allowed to fly above 400 feet. These were lights off, over 400 feet, over Picatinny Arsenal, just sitting there, and no one's doing shit about it.
And weren't they sitting there for 5 hours plus in certain cases?
Sometimes longer. And then, but we still don't know if it was just lights going off or they're popping into place. Because while this is going on, in the airspace south of there, we also were running a program that's more, we're running operations, let's say, that's more attuned for the UAP, the unidentifiable phenomenon. And we had UAP class stuff popping up to the south of there, coming in from the outer atmosphere and hovering into place and going back into space.
What do you mean you were running operations more attuned to the UAP?
We were looking for that. We were expecting that, looking for that, and making sure we were paying attention for things that fit the box of possibly being, well, and UAP is a very safe word. UAP is, the words are very, you should say UAP more often because it means unidentified, anomalous phenomenon. I mean, I don't know how you get, I don't know how that becomes as concrete as if there's aliens and spaceships flying around, because it's the opposite of clear or conclusive.
Yep.
So UAPs should be a safe word. So yes, it was UAP, and we were looking for UAP. We're looking specifically for things that we couldn't identify and clearly didn't fit into a box. The following nights, our plan was to get airborne in our helicopter and get a closer look legally under the guidance of the FAA's air traffic control. What was interesting about the situation is that there was a TFR set up over Picatinny Arsenal a month prior, like before Thanksgiving. And the TFR is a temporary flight restriction, which turns any airspace into highly restricted airspace on a case-by-case basis. And so someone had the foresight or the reasoning to set up a TFR to restrict drone activity over Picatinny Arsenal weeks before Thanksgiving. We're there, around Christmas or a little before Christmas. So this has been going on for a month in the area. And what's interesting about this TFR is it didn't restrict general aviation traffic. It only restrict UAS, unmanned aerial systems. So what that means is any member of the general public who got in their civilian aircraft with the pilot's license could fly through that TFR with no restrictions, but a drone could not. So they were carving out for drones. Well, the problem there is an aircraft could have an incursion with these drones, so everyone was pretending weren't there and was ignoring it, and now you have an accident or an incident, which is a safety risk. And when you get into safety risks for things that fly around in the air, things get serious really quick. And that was the biggest problem, and the biggest thing that wasn't being addressed that we were trying to make sure people were paying attention to was that to say there's no public risk, that's a really low-hanging fruit, not the most exciting detail to anchor to in this thing, but it's an anchor point where we could start digging and forcing people to give more concise reports from the DoD side, from the local law enforcement agencies, because nobody was working together there. There were over 59 local law enforcement entities working, not coordinating there. We had FBI, we had DoD, we had private partners on Picatinny, some from legacy programs that are very popular were there with their very fancy tools and toys. Everyone's doing their own thing.
Were you called in specifically?
Doesn't sound like research drones to me.
No, and this is interesting because we just the other day there was the black helicopter collided with a passenger plane and it killed 70-something people into the Potomac River. And this was recorded in October, you say? More or less.
I don't know. It was definitely recorded last year.
Last year. Yeah,
probably, I don't know where they are. The weather looks quite nice. So, I don't know.
TFR was the thing I was trying to remember. The temporary flight restrictions. That's what my uncle was showing me. And he was like, look at the whole eastern seaboard of the United States. And it was just like red. He's like, there's never been anything like this. This is weird. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. So that's interesting to hear Barber say that. Go ahead.
In our live questions as well, Coffee Bum has pointed out the drones didn't even start in New Jersey. We had Liberty Wing from the UK, from where I'm from, literally watching these drones plague a US-led UK base, RAF Lakenheath. And that was back in, when was it, November? So to say this is some sort of research, FAA has no jurisdiction in the UK.
That doesn't make any sense.
None of it makes any sense. That it's quite clear that the administration in the US has been fed something that makes no sense. They probably just were told don't ask about it, and they decided to make up their own thing, which is what the Biden administration probably did.
Can you imagine though? I have a hard time, and again, I'm not Trump's biggest fan, but I have a hard time with believing that he asks a question, gets a nonsense bullshit answer, and then doesn't chase it down. That doesn't. I don't know. Maybe he loses interest, and it's not a big deal for him, and he's got other things to think about, and maybe that's it. But I just feel like if you're the president and you're like, give me an answer, and they give you an answer, and you're like, that answer's bullshit. Go get me a better answer. Don't you think that would happen? Like, what president is like, oh, okay, nothing to see here.
I've never had an incident where self-preservation has really had to kick in, so I can't profess to know how I would react, of all people. And doesn't just go for Trump. This goes for politicians in general. Politicians, you've kind of got to be nasty to get to where you're going. So the likelihood is that most politicians, or at least a good portion of them, have some dirt. And Trump probably has his fair share of dirt hidden in the closet as well. So who knows what they could potentially threaten him with if he was to.
He's already been convicted of 30 felonies.
Yeah.
So I think this guy's not scared of anything at this point. He's like, I got convicted and I got reelected, so come at me, bro.
And at the same time, he's got to make sure the market's open in the morning. That's
true. It's the stock market. Can't scare the stock market. I want to show. Can we go to that clip from the Ingo Swann Art Bell interview?
Sure.
I want to set this up because the other day I've been reading this a lot of Ingo Swann lately, and I was listening to some interviews that he did on Art Bell's radio show, Coast to Coast AM, the legendary radio show, the legendary Art Bell. The he's just the best. And he interviewed Ingo a number of times. And this is back in the early 90s. They're doing this call and they're talking about the exact same stuff that we are talking about today. And let's see if we can play this clip because it's worth it. It's just fun.
It's just one thing. I've got to play the intro to.
Oh no! They'll ding us because that's a real song. We can't do that. I just realized.
Play the intro. The dun 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 dun. Oh, that's a shame.
I forget whose song it is, but we'll get
7 minutes 40. Okay, let's have a look.
But the intro's great.
Studio.
Well, in this particular case, there's no question that the Department of Defense has information. There's no question the Joint Chiefs of Staff has information on a need-to-know basis. They have the responsibility for. They even admit they have responsibility for providing security and gathering intelligence. So they have to know about this object, just so they do not do anything reckless.
Of course they have to know about it. If they don't know about it, they're idiots, and we're all in danger because they can't protect us. I saw one go over my head. I know what it is. So it's there.
It's really amazing, but it's only a temporary setback. But let me talk about what the judge found. He in his 8 pages, he devoted several pages to a discussion, and I just want to talk about 2 points.
All right.
One of which applies to you, of course, and that involves the 33 affidavits. And he found, and I'm reading from his decision, even if the court were to accept plaintiff's arguments that the affidavits conclusively establish the existence of a unique aerial object, this does not demonstrate that reports on the object are in defendant's possession. Therefore, the existence of the 33 affidavits does not create substantial doubt as to the reasonableness of defendant's search to defeat this motion for summary judgment.
Damn, you're going to have to read that again. There were 33 affidavits.
We don't have to go into this whole detail, but the point is they're talking about triangular-shaped craft is what they're talking about. That wasn't Ingo. That was a different person, the earlier guest. Ingo comes on in the second half of the show. But they're talking about triangular craft that are being spotted all over the place. This show was so good. I used to listen to it at it would come on at 11 o'clock at night and stay on until 3 o'clock in the morning or something. And I would listen to it in my car. And I used to go sit in the driveway at my house. If I was driving home from work and I was listening to it, I would sit in the car for 2 hours and just let the show play out and listen to it because it was so good. But yeah, back in whatever this was, 1991 or 92, they were talking about the exact same thing. They don't know what it is. I saw it with my own eyes. I know what I saw. The government's not talking. No one's saying anything. They don't want to talk about an unidentified object. And it just goes to show that the more things change, the more they stay the same. And it's so crazy because we feel like we know so much more now and we're so much closer to something. But yet the discussion is more or less the same as it was. Highly recommend everybody listen to that full interview, though. It's really good.
Yeah, I'll post the link to it actually in the Discord. Does hearing stuff like that, the echoes from the past, does that dishearten you at all? Because we've both had conversations with other people that from the community that you know, they don't see disclosure. Obviously, we're always told 2 weeks and stuff like that. That's the meme kind of thing. I don't think it's 2 weeks away, but I do feel like we are making progress. But there are people within the sphere, influential people within the sphere, that really think this is nothing new. And I'm 33, and I feel like I've been witness to enough of ufology to know, to be able to recognize when something feels different. And something does feel different right now. I'm wondering if you feel the same.
Oh, that's a great question. Something does feel different, but it's hard to say if that's because at the time when Coast to Coast was like my thing, there was really, the internet didn't exist in its current form, and social media and all these other things. So it may be that what we're feeling that's different is just that the volume, like this constant, it's just, there's a whole sphere now. There's a whole online world where all of this lives all the time, and we're kind of all in it together. So in the one sense, it feels like there is a camaraderie, and there is like we're all in this together kind of a mindset. And I think this community speaks to that. In terms of the phenomenon and like what's actually changed, if anything has changed, I don't know. I don't think the orb thing has always been around. Like orbs have been around forever, but they weren't associated with ufology. They were associated with
like spirits and ghosts.
Yeah. And people would take pictures, and there's little orbs and stuff. And it wasn't until Chris Bledsoe's case that people made the connection, and he was really kind of the guy who cemented that orbs and UAPs are somehow related. There's some connection there, and he's tripled down on that recently. So there's that. There's always been some prediction that something big was going to happen. Something big was going to happen soon, and we were all going to it was going to change the world. That's been around for a long time, as long as I can remember. What's changed is that now we have Congress is openly discussing it in a way that they never have before, and the government is talking about it, and I think it's been destigmatized to a large extent. So in terms of like the change, those are the things I see. It's more social change within the way our own culture absorbs and deals with this situation. But in terms of the actual phenomenon itself, it's hard to say, because we don't have data.
Stuff has come back around. Like even earlier in the week, I was getting like even Chris, one of the Chris Ovord from the Discord, one of our mod, had to talk me down because I was getting so annoyed at all these Redditors getting pissed off at the fact.
Oh, you were been out of shape on.
Yeah, everyone was talking about psionics as if it was like some crazy new concept, and I was like, this has been around for longer than I have known about ufology. And there are a load of people online talking about it as if it was literally fresh news from last week. And yeah, that really annoyed me because I literally since like 1996, which is probably the first year I could recognize what an alien was, psionics has always been a part of it. It's always been about psychic ability, telepathy, and things like that. So.
That book that Chris Ramsey shared in our text group this morning with the interview with the nurse, Errol, or whatever the alien's name was. That is all. That's been around forever. That book is old.
It's older than me.
It's all telepathy. She sat. The whole reason that exists is, according to the claims made in that book, that there's a few people have this ability, and this nurse on the base was one of the people who could telepathically communicate with this being. And then they did a series of interviews where she just like jotted down what she was being told, and it resulted in this whole book. So that's not new. I think the thing with Reddit is that you can't trust Reddit. Like Reddit's. We don't know who, all these accounts, they could be bots. A lot of them are just bad actors. A lot of them are just shitty people. A lot of them are great people. It's just, we don't know. And so when you go look at Reddit and you start reading comments, I think Reddit is where a lot of the fuckery happens to kind of mess with the community, Yeah, so I don't take Reddit I go there for articles and I read the things, but I try not to get too sucked into the commentary because that leads nowhere. Oh, looks like Patrick's in the house. Patrick. Are you there?
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, loud and clear. How you doing, man?
No lag, no echo, no crazy stuff going on?
No, you look good. You sound good.
How you doing? What's
Doing
going on?
good. Welcome back, man. It's good to have you.
Thank you,
For how's you got a new camera and a new light, a new mic? Would you upgrade?
All right, I got the light. I tried the light's awesome. So I look like a zombie now without the light. I don't do calls without the light. It's like Resident Evil mode. Try to avoid that, so keep the light going. But the mic I haven't been able to figure out just yet. So apologies for that. If
you sound great.
Like I'm under water, but what's new with you? What's up, guys?
We were just talking about the kind of the question of the day right now that we're kicking out to the people watching the stream is what has changed about ufology in your lifetime? Like what is different now than maybe what you thought was true 10 years ago or even 5 years ago? So we were just kind of going back and forth on that question. How about you? Is there something that you, we talked about, you love the movie Fire in the Sky. It's your favorite movie.
Yeah.
And,
like I got, dude, I'm traumatized right now. Like I've said, I'm still skirting the casual line of ufology. I just come at this from like a data perspective. And yeah, I got into it as a kid with all the movies and stuff, like everybody else, and Star Wars and Aliens and Fire in the Sky, and I've just watched from a distance and have been in and out of this. And I say over the last few years, and especially from this channel, have just gotten more involved in it, and things that I just disregarded. And I'm a casual, so I think I said on your the first podcast we did that Roswell was fake. So I'm sorry about that, but I'm a casual. Okay. So, but even over the last few months, things that I totally disregarded watching from the outside, I'm like, can this possibly be true? I think this is real. Things like remote viewing and things that as soon I would just tune out immediately with the conversation. I just have a much more open mind these days. But again, I kind of get in and out of this as time goes on. So
what's opened up your mind? Like what has changed for you?
Yeah, I think like everybody else, it was a New York Times story, and that was 2017, right? And like channels like this, and I would say the work weirdly that I do with Google. Just to recap, I'm a search engine marketer, and I have been doing this for 12 years, and I see everything that people search Google for. And for years, I thought it was just people like searching for shoes and divorce lawyers and farm equipment and Fire in the Sky DVDs and trauma insurance. But
therapists. Yeah.
It was like 4 years ago where I realized, okay, a lot of people look at Google as a search engine. Some people see Google as a marketplace veiled as a search engine that's closer to the truth. And a few people see Google as what it really is. It's like a data set, the greatest data set ever collected on humanity. It's 25 years of humanity's thoughts amassed. We have 40,000 Google searches that happen every second. That's 3.5 billion searches a day and 1.2 trillion searches a year going into Google's indelible servers that'll never be erased. And all of that can be connected with through the tool Google Ads as a direct line. You can access humanity's thoughts. It sounds insane, but it's really a tool that's publicly available that allows you have to pay for it, but you can see what people search, and people tell Google all kinds of things. And I think over the years that opened my mind to different experiences. It sounds weird, but people tell Google things that they're experiencing that might be unusual in different states of mind. And hence the Above Us app gave me the idea for that to run that. But I guess I'm more open-minded to people's experiences in a weird way. People tell Google things that I might have discounted before that are a big problem or a serious concern in certain segments of society. So I don't know if that makes sense, but
Totally. It makes a perfect sense. In fact, I think that's kind of like an interesting aspect of our unique time period that we're in. People treat Google like their priest
It's
or
a
their
confessional.
therapist.
Yeah, it's a confessional. People think they're not being monitored or watched. It really is staggering if you sit down and think about like the repercussions of being able to see anyone's searches from all over the world. Like, all right, if your crazy conspiracy uncle is saying that mermaids are abducting his cattle in Galway, and you're hearing about that, this is a terrible example. Let's keep going. Um, you hear about this issue in Galway. You don't have to take his word for it. You don't have to take the news word for it. You don't have to take anyone's word for it about any situation, anything you read on the news. You can just buy these keywords that occasion that location and those keywords and learn for yourself. You could target Galway with all the keywords related to cattle disappearances and see every single person in Galway who has cattle that's disappearing and who they are and when they searched and how that transmogrifies and changes over time in Galway, like a heat map of the occurrences. It's a
I can
way to
share
bypass.
the above
Yeah.
above us.io.
Anyway,
Let's have a look.
don't have to nerd out on this anymore, but it is a deep topic indeed.
Well, so we teased it at the top of the show, the aboveus.io URL, and this is also an app, as you pointed out, and we kind of explained a little bit about how it works. I talked about kind of the Google connection, but can you go into a little bit more detail about how this ties into what's going on with the drones and the UAP sightings that have been going on recently, and maybe some of the things that you've noticed?
This app was built in that crazy example with the cattle. It's kind of the same thing. But instead of buying my cattle disappeared in Galway, what do? I'm targeting keywords like I saw a UAP, I saw a UFO, report a UAP, report a UFO. And when people search through the mechanism of serving ads on Google, the direct line into Google servers essentially could see everybody in near real time who's searching for anything related to UAPs, and then it plots it to the map, occasioned by their demographic data. This is totally legal. The FBI does not have me at gunpoint right now. This is above board. It's just siphoning Google's data and presenting it to the public so they can use it as they wish. On the drone topic, I did not anticipate when I created this app, which was an enormous amount of work and we had a lot going on to focus on. The drone situation happened after this launched, and we did not anticipate anyone survey wanting to plot any data related to drones. We didn't have any interest in that because it wasn't top of mind. When that came out in the news and caused such a mania 4 weeks ago, I had a brainstorming meeting with the app team and how we could do this. And it was quite a heavy lift indeed to add and change the whole functionality of the app and add all these drone keywords that would have broken the workflow of the app. So what I had to do was I built all these campaigns in a separate Google Ads account. They're not in the app, but it was not possible. But I did run all the drone keywords in a separate Google account. Essentially, that shows you every single person, every single day, where they are, who's seeing drones. So I did share that data, and it's not going to be as pretty as going through the app, unfortunately, because it's not in the app. But it
I
is
have those screenshots available if you want me to share
we
them.
can walk through them real quick. If
Sure.
I just found some curious.
So this is the first one.
Yeah. So, yeah, this blue line is when the if you go very far, you don't have to go, but I'm talking about the very far left of that graph is when all the drone stuff started in the news, and you guys started talking about it in the podcast, and it became top of mind. I opened the Google Ads account and bought all the drone keywords in the U.S. and had my ad show every single time someone searches. I just saw a drone. How do I report a drone? There's a drone above my house, etc. It would populate in Google Ads, and then it populates here. So this is kind of a graph from, I think it goes back December 15th to, December 15th to present. And that shows you every single person who's searching day by day, and you could see how it kind of peters out in January, early January. as it gets out in the news. Now there's a spike recently, which this cuts off on the 29th. We're in January 31st. This is not exactly up to date, but this increase is happening again. It's like kind of spiking again. That's interesting. But, of course, this stuff is influenced by the news and how hot this news item is. But nevertheless, we can kind of track how many people are, supposedly seeing these drones. So that's level data.
What's the relevance of the 0, 50, and 100 here?
Yeah, those are impressions. So that's like every time the ad is triggered. In other words, every time somebody, because ad triggering is the mechanism in which I get the data. You could think of it as like as soon as someone hit enter in Google after I saw a drone, reported drone, etc., it's counted as an impression, and then it's plotted to this chart here.
Do you know anything, Patrick, about this idea? I heard Ryan Bledsoe recently said that drone is a very sensitive word, orb is a very sensitive word on Google, and that he said his specific statement, I'm paraphrasing, but he was like, orb is such a censored word that people are calling it Dior bags. They're using the code word Dior bags. Have you heard this?
No, that's interesting. And I've never even thought to buy the orb keyword until now. And that just got that idea. The nomenclature is constantly going to change. So like to find out that data, one would have to run those keywords. Now, what he means by sensitive on Google, that could mean that Google bans the ads from showing for orb if it's a sensitive keyword, and then we wouldn't be able to get the data in that case. There's a lot of keywords on Google that they do not allow for sensitive reasons, and they don't want to get in trouble. That might be one, but that's curious.
We've got a clip. I think it might be in this clip, Sander. There's one clip in the Google Drive from that podcast. Is there any way we could pull that up real quick?
Yeah, sure. Just give me a second.
This might be the one where he says it. I don't know, but they're talking about orbs and drones being confused for one another, and what's going on. People are seeing orbs, but they're reporting them like they're drones, and it's a lot of confusion.
Whole drone thing has been popping off, and everyone in the world is seeing orbs. Did you know that it's such a big phenomenon that very famous Hollywood celebrities are making TikToks and posts about it, and it's such a banned word on TikTok, the word orb, that people use the code word Dior bag, because orb is the most trending word in the world right now, that they're shadow banning the word orb.
So that tells you right there the logic behind the drones. They're trying to muddy the water, make all these average people think, oh my God, they're all drones, and when the orbs appear, it's a drone. Well, we're going to educate them different about that. I guarantee you.
That's just fear mongering.
Well, it's a way to control. I think they're afraid. I think the government's afraid.
Oh yeah,
they're terrified.
Because I've been in high-level meetings in D.C. with congressmen, with colonels from the Pentagon, and I'll be in meetings in the next month the same way.
A summit.
Yeah, and they're scared. They don't know how to control it. They have nothing that can defend themselves against it. But here's the problem. They don't want us messing with it. They don't want the public entertaining the idea of calling on it and looking for it, because they may not control it. So they're going to end up turning it negative or perverting it somehow, so they can keep control over the population. That's the plan. I've heard it many times, but it's not going to work.
No,
it's not going to work.
Yeah. And they'll do all kinds of psychological tactics. Like one of them they're doing now is they're spinning them as plasmoids. They're an alien race of these plasmoid beings. Oh, but they're also drones. So it's like
which is it?
Right. Like, so the common person who's not really initiated into this, they're like, what is it? What is it? Plasmoid. Oh my God, that's scary. Oh my God, it's drones. They're Chinese anti-gravity drones. No.
Well, let's address this plasmoid word real quick. Okay?
Thank you.
And if you get a picture, I'll give you a picture of one that I painted and a sketch that I did 17 years ago. And everybody's wondering, how did you get into NASA? Why were you there? Why were you studying with them? I have all the documentation. I have all the the proof in the world I was there. Photos, videos, meeting with scientists high level. What was their interest in me? Why did they need me? Right? Something I haven't talked about in all these years, why I was there. I kind of wrote about this in the book. When I ask them, why do you need me? Why do you want me here? You've got rockets, you've got space shuttles, you've got satellites, you've got the space station, all the money and technology and telescopes in the world. And they're like, well, we know they like you and they communicate with you and they don't have nothing to do with us at all. And we'd like to know why, what it is they want, and why it is they're harassing their astronauts.
Harassing them.
So has any astronauts ever seen an orb or one of these? All of them.
No way.
All of them.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah, that inspires me to, like, after this today, I'm gonna go in the drone account. It's not in the app account because for what I mentioned before, but I'll buy the orb keywords and see if there's any issue with Google and see how many people are actually searching for them. But
That would be really interesting to know.
and I'll report back and see if anything weird. That would be interesting if they suspended those keywords or something like that. If TikTok did, let's see if Google did. That'd be interesting. But it presents a good point. What we just saw, like the nomenclature of this is constantly going to change, and yeah, like I mean, a few days ago, my wife and I saw just like a strange light above our house, and we have for like the last couple of days. I'm not making too much of it, but yeah, if I'm casual, she's like super casual. So, all right.
Are you're in upstate?
Yeah, we're in Woodstock, New York, but she called it a drone. And that was just, I found that interesting because that's, for someone who's not involved in this at all, that's going to be their new firsthand description, I think.
So
easily terminology can change, right? Just like a few weeks of media blast.
So it's interesting. This clip, we were going to talk about it earlier because the that statement about the TikTok banned word and the Dior bags code word and everything. And one thing that Bledsoe talks about specifically, not just in this interview, but in many interviews, is that everybody can do this, and everybody has the ability. If you figure out how to do it, it's like kind of, you have to do some internal work and you have to kind of like practice it. But more or less, everybody can communicate with these orb beings somehow, and that's what he's talking about. He's like, if people found out that we could all call them and they would appear, what happens if 300 million people all call them at the same time? You know what I mean? Like, how many? Then do we just do these two worlds merge, or what happens? So that was a really interesting point, and it's kind of come up again and again, this whole telepathy aspect to it. And then there was another interview that he did on a different podcast that had something like a couple million subscribers, and they refused to air it. They said they're not going to air it because they don't want to be, they can't be associated with that part of the story.
Oh, Sean Ryan.
Sean Ryan's thing, yeah.
It's interesting.
Is that on YouTube?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Another thing we could try is that'd be curious. Like you could buy certain channels and placements and videos, YouTube videos to advertise on, and sometimes Google suspends those. They don't want anyone advertising on certain videos, and they kind of shadow ban advertisers from them.
Oh,
but that'd be interesting to see if you could like run ads on those videos to try to get the data of people who are watching the video, and then maybe you could find out if they're like they don't want anyone to see it. But it'd have to be on YouTube because that's a Google platform. But
one thing that has changed, this was something we were talking about before you came on the air, but the one thing that has changed a lot about ufology, certainly since Fire in the Sky came out, is that now I gotta go watch that movie. We can crowdsource a lot more than we could at that time. Like the fact that you're even able, like, look at this conversation we're having now. You built this app and this website, and now you're able to, like, we have one talk about it. You looked at this clip. Now you're going to like go look into this, and we might actually get some real information that we could use. And that's never really been possible before. I think that's pretty amazing.
Do it in 5 minutes. Takes 5 minutes to buy the orb. Like I would know by tomorrow if Google allows orb keywords. I would know by tomorrow if I tried to buy that YouTube channel or video to run ads on. I'd know if it was allowed in minutes. So yeah, you're exactly right. It's amazing what, and I'm an expert in Google, but I don't know anything about social media platforms. But if you can bend a publicly available tool that's 23 years old and find new loopholes into it that no one else is, the same is going on in every tech platform that's publicly available. And
Yeah.
you can totally bend them to your will and crowdsource data, and I'm sure in any way that you want by exploiting the mechanisms that they have set up with advertisers in which they
Yeah.
pass data to them. There's so much to gather from that.
I have a question for everyone here, and this is just for the audience, and that Patrick for you and Xander for you. I'm just curious what you guys think, because I know that each of us, our spouses or significant others or whatever you want to call it, aren't as into it as we are. And I often find that when I step outside of the UFO bubble, it's like crickets out there. Like a lot of people, there's still very closeted people who I find out every once in a while, like, oh, I didn't know this person was super into it, but they are, and they just don't talk about it a lot. But I guess my question is, how are we just obsessively looking inside at the walls of our own bubble and just trying to figure it out and getting like lost in this space because we're so steeped in it all the time? And or is this really so global and so big that people even outside of the bubble are getting switched onto it constantly and coming into this? Like, what's your sense of like how it's affecting people who don't look at it every single day? Does anybody have a thought on that?
I can't. Yeah, I could tell you what happened with. I think the biggest conflict I've had since I ran this app was an afternoon. It wasn't a conflict, well, like an argument with my wife, because when the drone conversation reached its manic pitch, I don't know what day that was. Definitely like 4 weeks ago. We had conflicting ideas on how to handle it, and it felt like it literally felt like, I'm sure everyone can relate to this, that first day of COVID when it like shit hit the fan kind of feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It was like that one day where everything shut down, and then you got texts about NBA shutting down, and
Yeah.
theaters and the subways, and then it was that single 24-hour period, and I'm sure there were a lot of disagreements in households about how to navigate that. And my wife got really upset that day, like 4 weeks ago. She kind of got really caught up in this, the conversation, and she's really outside of this, and it really upset her. And she wanted to get a lot of like supplies and stuff,
Yeah.
Backup generators and Swiss Army knives and logs and who knows. We agreed finally to pump the brakes and see how this panned out. And then 2 days later, everything was fine. And I didn't have to spend all this money on, quick start logs and poison, snake bite repair kits. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, totally. Xander, we were talking about this a couple of weeks back. We were like, what do you get when you're trying to prepare for some emergency that you don't know what it's going to be? Like, what do you even buy? You're like, I'm going to get, I don't know, bottled water, get some Band-Aids.
It's I don't know the climate in the US. I can't profess to know, but in the UK, my impression is that if you do any sort of survival preparedness, you're a weirdo. Like, even, it's. I don't live in London. I don't live in a metropolitan area. I live in pretty much the farm centre of the UK. So you'd think everyone around here would have a gun because we're all farmers, but even owning a gun is like, that's a conversation point around here. So yeah, from my impression is there's a hell of a lot of interest, but it's all quite new media in my experience. If you want to learn about this stuff and really get into the topic, you're going to have to get on the internet and do a few hours at least to really understand you know, what the theories are, the prevailing theories, and all of that. You know, my father-in-law, he's genuinely very interested, but he knows nothing about this topic.
Yeah.
But he wants to know. But where do you start? Like, there's 30 years worth of law that I've been exposed to, and I'm only 33. So where the hell do you start with this stuff? You're not gonna switch on the BBC in the UK and search UFO and find any stories about it. It just doesn't happen. So where do these people look for their stuff? They're going to have to go onto Google, and it's just not something that a lot of people do over the age of, I don't know, let's say 60. There's a steep drop off.
And to your point, Xander, what do you even search for? Like, how do you even know what do you type? What is the query that you put in to begin? Like, where?
I mean, my foundations are in like old school forums, like Above Top Secret and stuff. And now, you know, I primarily go to Reddit and things like that. But they're still, like, in my opinion, they're still sort of niche. They're not BBC. They're not MSNBC. They're not any of that. Like,
Yeah, I believe a lot of people's introduction to this topic is like something as banal as like Instagram Reels. And that might start the journey where their algo pushes some video or some topic they follow. Then they turn to Google to verify that topic. It starts their journey. But I think, you know, how the algorithms are designed with social, and it's testing different topics. It's going to find who might be interested in this topic, but they don't know how to like translate that into a query or anything else.
Do you think, in your experience, do you think there will be a moment where there could, or at least there could conceivably be a moment where a story on TikTok or Instagram is so viral? For example, let's just say, you know, one of these new whistleblowers reveals a video, an unmistakable video of an NHI, of a non-human intelligence, and it goes viral worldwide. Do you think that there is a tipping point where the world's biggest news agencies, such as the BBC, NBC, they simply can't ignore it? Or do you think that even in the face of a video as viral, you know, let's say Baby Shark, but it's just NHI, like, do you think there's a point where they have to acknowledge it, or they just continue to stonewall the whole idea?
I operate under the belief, and I'm 99% confident that all major news outlets are operated, at least in part, by the Central Intelligence Agency or an intelligence agency, whether it's the BBC. If that's your pipeline into your public, and your job is to like maintain society and figure out how to like control people, of course you're going to have people. This is what Operation Mockingbird was all about. They had CIA agents in every newsroom in America, intercepting stories, changing things around, inserting stories that didn't, you know, maybe weren't originally going to be covered, and making sure that those were covered. So in terms of like getting major news organizations to cover it, I think it would take something like an Independence Day type. You need that ship the size of Manhattan hovering above Central
Trafalgar
Park.
Square. Has to be something showing up in Times Square or Trafalgar Square, and it's got to be unmistakable.
That think it's deep faked or cheap faked or conspiratorial, and that's like there is a difference between something going viral on the news or legacy media and then how people take it. I am in the cynical camp, unfortunately, that I don't think anything can really get everybody on board about something, because there's always going to be this, you know, that it's pushed too hard. It can't be real. Why are they pushing it so hard? Why all this like deep fake, cheap fake technology exists? What's the agenda? This and that.
You know,
like we could never get on board now with anything as compelling as it might be, but
there's not one consensus anymore. There's like 4 consensuses. Like, if that consensi, what's the plural of consensus? We had Elon, and I'm not going to go there, people. So just relax. But we had Elon do something really amazing twice, just in case you missed it the first time. And some people can't agree on what he did. And it was on television, it was on camera, it was live. Everybody saw it. We saw it a million times. We all watched it over and over again. And we're like, and some people are like, oh no, that's not what it was. And other people are like, I know what I saw.
Branching. Look at the butterfly effect from something like that, and how much different sub-genre of arguments and defenses have been built around that. And
now there's just two camps. It's like my camp and everybody else's. Yeah.
Now imagine a UAP, like the most compelling footage imaginable. How many subgenres of and new sub-movements of conspiracy would be created from that, or arguments or dissection, or
I think that's part of the objective of the, if you want to call it the legacy program or the deep state or whatever. I mean, the intelligence agencies, whatever it is, there's a hidden hand in the background that's manipulating public opinion to maintain a level of confusion and disorientation. The thing that they're really scared of, and I think this is what Chris Bledsoe was alluding to, was that they don't want everybody on the same page. As long as everybody's not on the same page, it doesn't matter if one group has all the correct information. What we need is every group to disagree about what's correct or what's information, what's even reliable. And if they can maintain that, then yeah, this problem kind of solves itself, because you could leak the best video tomorrow of every, the Dan Burrish thing. What if 2 hours of footage came out that corroborated every single thing he ever said in his interviews? People would watch it and go, I don't know.
Interesting point on that. Jason Sands apparently was on Joe Rogan a couple of days ago, and I think he corroborated a lot of Dan Borish's story. I need to watch it. Yeah, that's another video.
I saw that in the chat. Somebody was just talking about that, whoever that was. Thanks for mentioning that. I made a note. 220 at the Rogan Sands interview. Dan Aykroyd's interviews are sweet. Jason Barrett. Dan Aykroyd's great. We could get Dan Aykroyd on the show. I bet Dan would come on. He's not doing anything.
Amazing.
The Blues Brothers is probably in my top 5.
Oh, I was playing that soundtrack for my son the other day. He loved it. It's the best.
Coming back to that question you asked me at the top, when did things change for me? Another big turning point for me. It's not related to UAPs, but there's a book called Chaos by Tom O'Neill that blew my mind. This book is amazing. I don't want to give away too much. It is about Charles Manson on the surface. And if you're not interested in that at all, still encourage you to read it, because I'm not. But that's just the surface of this giant rabbit hole that Tom O'Neill goes down. That makes you question a lot about what you're told, even though it has to do with the Manson murders. It's the magnitude and the effects of it is far greater. And this guy spent 20 years of his life on this book.
Did he get into any of that MK Ultra stuff, or
talks all about that, and Black Panthers and the hippie movement and acid tests and rigged juries and intelligence people who traveled the world, and the people you read about in mystery novels, that they have no communication with their family. Their wives don't know what they do after 30 years. They go all over the world and clean up crime scenes or interfere with politics. All these guys are in the book. And in Chaos, Tom O'Neill's story started as a little magazine article about the Manson murders. It was a 4,000 word piece. And it opened up such a rabbit hole. That magazine went under. He lost all the advance money. He went in debt and spent 20 years exploring the story and still didn't get to the end of it. And he ended up with this book that was so massive he needed an assistant to help him write it. But it's an incredible... makes you, if anything, will make you question a whole lot, and I do recommend it. But that was one for me, and I read that 5 years ago.
I think if you just start with the things that we already know, and you assume that that's the tip of a huge iceberg, the things that we know that the CIA has done, MK Ultra is crazy. They took people from mental hospitals and they bombarded them with brainwashing and psychedelics and mind control drugs and tried to create sleeper agents. And the only reason that the MK Ultra program is known about today was because it leaked. That was one they weren't going to tell you about. Like the fact that we know anything about it is just the result of a leak. That's one. The Tuskegee Airmen experiment where they gave American pilots syphilis, and they have experimented with radiological weapons and radiation poisoning on American citizens, civilians, private civilians in regular suburban neighborhoods. They blasted them with radiation to see what would happen. This is stuff our government does all the time. And has done all the time. The Operation Mockingbird, where they would manipulate the news media and control what you see. There's a really interesting clip out there, and it was I think it was Conan O'Brien who actually showed it one time, and it was a supercut of all the local news. Yeah. Have you guys ever seen this? Where it's like your local news. So when you turn on the local news for your town, and you're like watching your local kind of like B team news people, and they're like, "Yeah, this is what's going on," and it's like 100 different local news stations all reading the exact same script, and they just keep stacking them, and by the end it sounds like 1,000 people all reading, like the Borg, all reading one script.
I have seen that.
Oh, it's weird. So it makes you wonder, like, yeah, if that's the stuff we know about, what don't we know about?
I've got that clip, by the way.
Can we show it?
Yeah, of course.
Just so people at home can see
funny.
this.
It's funny. I've seen it as well. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But we are concerned about troubling, irresponsible, one-sided news stories
plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these things simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous.
That's crazy.
Play the whole clip. Just go finish it out.
Okay.
Yeah,
sure.
To our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous 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 to our democracy.
God. Oh, it's hard to, yeah. It's
now that makes me want to like roll back my cynicism about no one ever being able to believe anything in a weird way, because there's no way you can deep fake such a video as that, there should be one route of discussion from that video. There shouldn't. I mean, it's clear as day. How could you argue that the manipulation of such a video?
So interestingly, this is just a sidebar, and then I have a different question for you, Patrick. But interestingly, News Nation, the network that is kind of the center of the UAP world right now, is owned by another company. What's it called? It's called like Nexstar, or I forget the name of the company that it's owned by. But that company owns local news stations, local TV channels, hundreds of them, interestingly. And according to someone I just spoke with yesterday, who I won't name, but I have to verify this, but this person was telling me that, you know who owns that company or who finances it? It has something to do, it's somehow tied to Chris Mellon and the Mellon family. And so it makes you wonder, and I've had this question for a long time. If you go to News Nation's website, for a national news organization, they've got a really, really empty website. There's almost nothing there, considering how much news there is. Like, they have a link on the top of their bar, their link menu at the top, and it's space, right? And you click it, and it's one thing drops down: UFOs. there's no. Newsnation.com. You click space and there's only one thing pops up. It's UFOs. There's nothing about NASA. There's nothing about the moon. There's nothing about anything that's going on in space. No SpaceX, none of that stuff. It's just UFOs. Yeah. And if you look for other news stories on that website, I feel like this is almost, I have this weird suspicion that News Nation is a front of some kind. And they just staffed up really quick over a period of like, I don't know, like 30, 60 days. Suddenly they went out and hired a bunch of people. They've got Andrew Cuomo on there doing his show and a bunch of other people. And it looks very like, oh, it's like a news. This is news, right? But what it really is doing is just pumping out a lot of very specific UFO information all the time. And I have suspicions about what's behind all that. I can't prove any of this. I don't know that there's necessarily anything, nefarious going on. But I've just, on the heels of that other clip, I thought that was interesting.
Every time I'm in a deli in Long Island and News Nation is playing, I think of your show because you were like railing against how random and out of nowhere it was. And then I remember like a day after that show, I saw it in every deli in Long Island. Like
that's
as a way to, I'm like, who are these guys? It seemed to come out of nowhere. I know they didn't come out of nowhere, but it seemed like they did.
They kind of did, though. Like, go find, where was News Nation? Think about it. Like, if CNN, NBC, CBS, Fox, that's it. Yeah. That was it. Like, that was it. And then it's like one day out of nowhere, they're like, News Nation, America's source for news. And I'm like, who the fuck is News Nation? I'm 44 years old. I've never heard of News Nation until 2 years ago or whatever it was, 3 years ago. And then suddenly they're everywhere. That doesn't make any sense. That's interesting. I need to go to my gym, and when they have all the TVs, I'm going to see if I can get somebody to put News Nation on and just watch people and see if anybody else reacts to it. But
it's so confused. Everything is so confusing. Every week it gets more confusing. Not even in the UAP space, just everything on the phone. I have to put my phone down for like extended periods of time now. I just get I got like brain rot, I guess is the
well,
term.
It's beautiful where you live. You can go out and walk and enjoy
I have to do it. I run to get out of the situation of even in the grocery store, I'm like, I'm lost. I don't know what's real.
That's fucked up. For real?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what to believe.
You know what's interesting about what you just said? The reason I reacted that way is because I feel that way too sometimes, and I didn't know anybody else felt that way. Sometimes I'm walking around the store and I'll just be out in public and I'm looking around. And I'm like, is this shit real? Like, is this real? I can't believe that. Like, on one hand, like part of my brain is thinking about interdimensional time traveling UFOs, and that's real. And now I'm at the grocery store and I'm trying to pick out a cereal, and I'm like, these two worlds can't. Something's not right.
Your cereal aisles in the US are a joke, though. Let's be honest.
Well,
like,
it wouldn't even qualify as cereal.
When I was working in the US, it was like the amount of stuff in one place. It really is. That's the ontological shock.
How much shit we have in a store.
You've just got so much stuff.
Next time you come over, I'm going to take you to a gun store, and I'm going to rock your world. You're going to see some shit you've never seen before when you go to a real American gun store.
Right before COVID, I went into a Dick's Sporting Goods for like a pair of shoes, and there was a snaking line for firearms at Dick's Sporting Goods. And the kids who were on this line, you would not trust them with a firearm. It looked like they'd been playing Metal Gear Solid 2 for about 15 years. And I was very concerned. That's when I knew shit was about to hit the fan, when I was in Dick's Sporting Goods that day. I'm like, this is not going to work. This guy can't fire a gun. This is not.
For me, it was the exact same moment. I had it at a Walmart, though, and because believe it or not, Walmart, which I guess is like Tesco for you guys, like over in the UK, right, Xander? It's like Walmart.
I think Walmart owns. We have a shop called Asda. And I think Walmart owns Asda now.
Go into
Tesco's the biggest, I think, here.
You go into a Walmart. I went into Walmart at the beginning of COVID, and the very first thing I noticed before anything else sold out, you know what sold out first? Bullets.
Yeah.
9mm bullets were gone. You couldn't get them. Shotgun shells gone. The whole ammunition rack was sold out all the way down to 22 caliber. It was all sold, and that almost never happens. And that was weird. So Americans' first response is to like arm up and like lock and load. Yeah, it's a little scary. Patrick, I want to come back to the drone situation for a second, because that's one of the things that we wanted to have you on to talk about, and we got off on this other thread. But based on the data that you're seeing, based on what you've looked at, and just kind of your, I don't know, you do a temperature check on the drone thing. Do you have a sense of what's going on in that makes sense to you?
Unfortunately, I can see it doesn't give me a window into an explanation. It just gives me a window into where these occurrences are. It doesn't give me a window into the explanation because people don't present their query in a way that would reveal anything about it. In other words, they're not detailed in how they're searching about what this phenomenon could be or an explanation. It's just like,
is it consistently at the same level, or do you see it does it continue to rise over time? Or, I mean, I looked at the slide we looked at before. It was kind of
petering off, but over the last 4 days, even though that slide cut off, I have seen like a resurgence in this. It is complicated, this kind of thing, because it is influenced by how hot the media is at that particular day and what people are seeing, and then they're searching, they're looking, and then they might think they see something. So there's that going on in this. But nevertheless, I think it is valuable to see trends in this, and especially where those trends are, and compare them to what we're being told the trends are. I think that's super valuable, right? Like, if we're told that these are occurring in one place, but the data tells us otherwise, that's interesting.
I guess it might be useful to point out as well that someone's only going to really search it once, maybe twice. So, like, if this becomes a daily thing for them, they're not going to search it every single night. So, in some sense, it's kind of going to follow the news cycle. When it's fresh, people are going to look outside and see it for the first time and give it a Google search. But if it happens for the next 30 days, they're not going to search it for 30 days continuously.
What keeps it worth running is that when the news cycle shifts and they stop discussing this so much, how much is this influenced? And where do the pockets open up in these sightings continue? And how does it change? Those are all things I want to explore. And once that influence, and it's already happening, when that diminishes, how does it impact the data? And I want to keep it running for that reason alone.
Have you had any progress? Or I know that you were looking for some partners or you were trying to figure out a way to kind of offset the cost of doing this. Has there been any progress on that?
No. Supposedly, I can't talk too much about it, but supposedly there's going to be a big story about the app in the next few weeks, working with a writer on that at a major publication. So I hope that happens to get more attention on it. And but we're going to see what happens with that. It's tricky because the drone topic is not exactly as hot as it was 3 or 4 weeks ago. So might be a challenge to get anyone interested in writing about it. But as far as the app goes, I have not. So I'm still paying for this every month. It's about $1,000 a month to keep it going, to buy the keywords, keep the app maintenance costs, and the drone keywords. Without the drone keywords, it's like $500 a month. But it's something I'm just so curious about that I want to keep it running. And if anything else, it's a blueprint that I can apply to other areas in the future. It's not limited to the UAP space. If there's something else that happens, any world event, I'd want to know how to build an app or run data to help other people, crowdsource it. And this is just a learning experience to that end. Like I spoke about on the first time we spoke was I learned how to do this during COVID because in Tanzania for like a few weeks, there was this controversy going on when COVID was like first, we were first becoming aware of it. There were rumors that Tanzania had a major issue and that there were many deaths over there. And the official response from Tanzania was that they had no COVID issues at all. And they kind of suppressed all the data that was coming out of there in terms of infections and deaths. So what I did was I ran ads there to get the true story about it. So that's when I realized that this can be used to like capture what I call data flares and people asking for help through a publicly available tool, and we can capture those. And you don't have to take a government's word for it about anything. Nothing at all. You can just ask the citizens, not even ask them, but intercept what their concerns are. So that's extremely valuable, and I think it's applicable in the future. So if anything else, this experiment with the UAP app can just train me on to be ready for that if it's ever needed.
I think that's going to be how we get answers. It's going to come through us. It's not going to come through the government for sure. I think it's going to have to be something that regular people start to figure out one way or the other. And sooner or later, if something does change, if there is a global sighting event or a gigantic mass contact event, it's going to be really interesting to watch this website and see what kind of data you get from that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's coming. I feel like that has to be around the corner to be motivating all the stuff that we're seeing right now. It just seems like there wouldn't be this much smoke without some kind of a fire pushing it along, you know?
And I don't want to get too sci-fi with this, but I do think about this kind of stuff. And in a situation like that, okay, say that event happens, what are the needs of citizens, right? Like,
yeah.
What goods do they need? What services do they need? We can find out by running Google ads to it, and the same mechanism that's making the app function to find out what those needs are and maybe provide goods and services to those people and cities and demographics that need them, whether it's supplies or whatever.
We got a question from the community. Sage Sleuth wants to know, is there any way to donate in order to help what you're doing?
Yeah. On the website, there is a section in the top right, like these 3 bars you can click. On the app, it's the same thing. And there's a donate button there that goes to a, whatever that I forget the name of it. The fundraising website, Kickstarter, or not that, whatever it is. You can donate through there and it helps offset the cost of the app. But yeah, I've been doing this for years, 5 years, just buying different campaigns and everything else, experiments. But yeah, any bit helps, certainly, and allows me to test these new terms, because when I buy the orb keywords tonight, I do have to pay for it. What I mean by pay for it is you have to pay for the clicks that make the data possible.
Right.
So there was that website during COVID that became like super popular in the UK. I don't know if it was the same in the US, but it was called like Worldometers, and it was basically what everybody used when coronavirus really took like hold of the planet, and everybody used it to like track the cases, the deaths, everything like that.
That's right.
It seemed to be like.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but I have to step away for 2 seconds from my desk. Can you?
Of course.
Fly the plane for a minute. I'll be right back.
I do remember that, and I tried to do the same thing in the U.S. and I did for a little while, just using the Google searches. I created a map, and I did that in Tanzania because it was cost prohibitive. And I did that for a while, but then Google banned all the keywords related to COVID. But I do remember that, and there was a time when that it's hard to remember that. But there was
why would they ban a keyword like something related to COVID?
Yeah, because the mechanism of getting this data and how I do it and how anyone would have to do it, the way it works, somebody searches, and just buying the keyword doesn't mean I get the data. I buy the keyword and then an ad shows up to the searcher. So the way this works is they type in, I saw a UAP, they see the ad, and that act of the ad showing makes the data come into Google Ads. Without the ad, it doesn't work. But the reason they don't want the ads running is because it's a sensitive event. So it looks bad to go on Google, like to seem to be profiting from COVID. And the event got so big, they allowed the ads for a while, and then it became a pandemic, and the political pressure was probably very high on them, and it just looks crass to allow ads to run, advertisers to potentially profit on such a thing, and the blowback to them, the risk of that is greater than any click revenue they could get from ads related to it. So that's why. But there's so many keywords in Google that are banned in sensitive areas.
Interesting.
And what is considered sensitive changes all the time as the political pressure changes on them, and fines change, and legal stuff wraps up and opens up. And
is there evidence to suggest that they're kind of also lobbied a little bit by the government in terms of because in the UK we have I've forgotten the name of it, but there's literally sort of like a mandate that the UK government can put on media, for example, where they're basically, it's not lawfully enforced, but they're effectively told you can't run a story like this. So
sure I have no evidence of that, but I'm sure that goes on. And there are spaces where, especially like rehab, anything related to substance abuse or drugs related stuff. I ran campaigns for a while when Trump was first elected. I was curious because there were all these people saying they wanted to kill Trump. Right. I heard that all the time. Assassination threats and it. So I just got curious and I was like, who are these people? And I bought keywords related to that, and people were searching, like actually typing that into Google. Like, I'm going to kill Trump. Like, wild. Or like, I am going to, like, literal searches would be, I'm going to assassinate Trump. I don't know who
searches that on Google?
I don't know what hayseed maniac in a idling like Silverado truck in the middle of nowhere is like Googling, I'm going to kill Trump tomorrow. But these people did. And I got that data because Google allowed me to run ads on I'm going to kill Trump. And in 2020, they allowed me to run political ads. There was a Wired story about that caused a little bit of controversy and I believe made Google change their rules. They wrote about what I did, but I ran political ads that if you typed in, should I vote for Biden? It would say, no, he's a pedophile. Google allowed me to write that. And I did the same. And can you imagine if I just put like $1,000 into that, if I had a massive campaign and I'm just one person, if I had a massive, even an office of people, and we had $1 million budget, the amount of swing voters you could sway who are turning to Google. If you're turning to Google and asking, should I vote for Trump or Biden, you're in trouble. But
that's what the Cambridge Analytica scandal was. Exactly. Remember that?
Very similar. And I think I was doing something similar to what they were doing, but for Google, and just to see if I could do it.
Yeah.
And they allowed me to write that both presidents were pedophiles. And then the icing on the cake is to Google let me at the time send the traffic wherever I wanted. So for the Trump ads, I sent them to CNN, and the Biden ads, I sent them to Fox. And that was totally okay, even though the website said nothing about any claims in the ads. That all Wired picked up that story, and then Google changed everything. I don't know if it was because of that, but you can't do that anymore with the political ads. So that's one example. They're constantly changing as pressure comes down on them. They know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. It's not like, oh, we didn't know political ads were running. We had no idea. They know what they're doing. They just make a lot of money off of it. So until they get caught, they'll risk it.
Wow. That's really interesting. Well, I guess they're making, $60 billion a quarter or whatever the number.
It was 90% before AI and cloud and all. Google was 90. I mean, the ads were 90% of their revenue, hundreds of billions. It's still a lot.
Yeah.
Cloud has eaten into that and all these other things. But yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Gosh, we're running low on time here. Do we want to do any calls, Xander? What do you think? We have anybody?
Probably a little bit late at this point.
A little bit late.
My wife is she's got a bad back. So I need to go and, rub her back for a little bit.
I threw my back out a couple of weeks ago, and God, it was the worst thing ever. It was so bad. I get it.
There's no euphemism there. That's just a true story. She's genuinely got a bad back.
Sure. Got a bad back. Okay. Patrick, is there anything else you wanna say to the people while we're wrapping up here before we go?
Just please check out the app. and any support is appreciated, even if it's like spreading the word about it. And Clint, thank you for, again, the platform to discuss these things. You're doing an amazing thing here. And Xander, thank you for getting me on and the logistics of everything. And really appreciate you guys.
Hey man, thanks for being here, Patrick. It's great to have you. You're a friend of the show. I'm proud to call you a friend, and I'm glad that we're able to do this, man. It's a lot of fun. Thanks for all the work that you're doing too.
Got it, and I'll keep it up.
Punk rock. It's punk rock.
I'll report back to you on the orb and what was it, plasmoid?
Plasmoid and orb.
And yeah, you might have to email me the that very orb like long tail bizarro keyword that TikTok uses. Maybe try that out.
I'll send you the interview clip, and you can take a look.
All right, thanks a lot.
AboveUs.io is the URL to go to the website. You can also look for the Above Us app in the App Store on your App Store of choice. And yeah, check it out. You can go there and donate to support the cause. And it's punk rock ufology. We're going to try to figure this thing out together as a group.
Thank you.
All right, gang, we're going to go ahead and wrap it there. Thank you to everyone who joined us this evening. If you were here with us live, it was great to be with you. It's always wonderful to talk to you all, to see you in the chat. If you're watching this later, thank you for watching. Thanks for being a part of what we're trying to do. And if you really want to help out the show and you like what you're seeing and you like our conversations and you want to support us, you can do that by becoming a subscriber. That's probably the easiest and simplest, straightforward, best way to do it. Or you can go to teamnightshift.com and check us out there. Either way, works for us. Thank you for watching. We will see you on the next one. Until then, keep looking up.